Frank, I believe Mr. Hewitt is going first, okay, on the interviews.
Got it. Thank you. All right, we'll get started. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today, the board will participate in 2 meetings. We will begin the day with a special meeting for the IG search, where we will publicly interview our 2 finalists and then choose our next Inspector General if that's the board's desire at that point. Our virtual regular board meeting will begin at a time certain of 5 p.m. All meetings today will be conducted using Google Meet technology for board members and staff who are participating live. Viewers and listeners can access the meeting today by either watching on Comcast channel 235 or by using the YouTube link on our webpage at palmbeachschools.org. We also offer a listening-only option which the public can access by calling 561-357-5900 or toll-free at 1-866-930-7015. The meeting ID is 1-561-880-1124 with the hashtag sign. I now call the special meeting to order. Mrs. Bass, will you please call the roll? Please verbalize your response.
District 1, Barbara McQuinn.
Here.
District 2, Chuck Shaw. District 3, Karen Brill.
Here.
District 4, Erica Whitfield.
Here.
District 5, Frank Barbieri.
Here.
District 6, Marcia Andrews.
Here.
District 7, Deborah Robinson.
Here.
We can't hear you, Mr. Barbieri.
Probably better sometimes, I would think. Let's start again. Also joining us on a virtual dais is Superintendent Dr. Donald Fenoy, General Counsel Julianne Rico, Inspector General Lung Chu, and Board Clerk Carol Bass. This meeting is being transcribed by a closed captioner, so remember to speak at a reasonable pace. I'm not going to review the meeting protocol. You all know that if you raise your hands, I'll call on you in the order I see you. You also all know that you need to leave your microphones off unless you're speaking so that we don't get the feedback. I saw Mrs. Brill put her hand up. Do you have a question, Mrs. Brill?
Actually, before we bring in our first candidate, I wanted to just say that, we've all had a chance to interview both of them, and I would like to make a motion, since we've all spent time with them, that we reduce the number of questions that we ask to 7 rather than the 14.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Mrs. Brill. Do we have a second? Dr. Robinson? Want to speak?
I was seconding her motion.
Okay. Mrs. Brill?
And I just wanted to add that I think that it just seemed to me to be overkill to do 14 questions after we spent, each of us, at least a half hour to whatever, speaking with them. So I just feel that, the 7 would be for me sufficient to make a decision. Thank you.
All right, we'll take a vote on the motion. I'm sorry, Mr. Shaw, you have a comment? Go ahead.
Yes, before we vote on that, can you share with us what the rules are relating to the questions? If we're doing the 7, which I'm fine with, do we have to use suggested questions, or I know that we should ask the same question to each one? So can you just clarify that before we take this vote?
Yeah, we have to ask, according to Mrs. Rico, we have to ask the same exact questions to all 7 of the, to both of the candidates. And of course, if there are follow-up questions, those don't have to necessarily be the same. I don't believe, because they're based on the answer to the main question. So we each would go down the list. We'll start with District 1 and we'll go down the list, and each of us will ask our question and then have the opportunity to ask a follow-up. I've got the rest of the process of work today that I can go over with you. Mrs. Andrews, did you have a question?
Yes. Do we have to use the questions on the list? Is that what you're saying?
No. We were given some suggestions that we could consider if we didn't have our own questions, but each of us was able to come up with our own questions. You didn't have to submit those in advance. Whatever you have for today is what you're allowed to use. It's for your question. All right, so I'll now go over the process for our public interviews. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to provide an opening statement at the beginning of each of their respective interviews. Following that, there will be 1 round of questions from each board member. Each board member will ask their question and then proceed to the next board member until each of the round, each board member has had an opportunity to ask their question. Candidates will be given 3 minutes to answer each question and 1 minute for any follow-up question. The second candidate will be sequestered with a member of the HR team during the time the first candidate is being interviewed. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to provide a closing statement at the conclusion of each of their respective interviews. When both candidates have completed their interviews, the board will be given the opportunity to decide whether they wish to move forward with voting on the candidates or take some other type of action, as well as having the time to collect their thoughts regarding the candidate interviews. Should the board decide to move forward with a vote, board members will be sent an electronic link to vote for their selection for the position of Inspector General, similarly as to how we used a link to shortlist the candidates. At that point, the HR search team will tabulate votes and determine the candidate that we're moving forward with. If this meeting ends prior to 5 p.m., the board will take a break and come back to a meeting. We'll use the same meeting link for the 5 p.m. board meeting. And by the way, all of that process that I just read to you was not made up by Frank Barbieri, the chairman. It was made up by the HR department. I was only asked to read it. So that's the way they've set this up, and they've asked me to read that process, which I just did for all of you. Unless you have any questions at this point, we'll have Mrs. Bass go ahead and admit Mr. Hewitt so we can start the process. And then I ask that Dr. LaCava or Mr. Mitchell, you take over at this point and conduct this part of the process.
Sure.
Ms. Burrell, do you have a question first?
I don't think we voted on my motion.
You did not actually vote. You have a first and a second, but not a vote. And I don't see Mr. Hewitt's invite to get in. So if HR could please tell him to try his link, please.
Okay, so let's vote on Ms. Burrell's motion. All those in favor of only one round of questions, please raise your hands. Anybody opposed? Okay, the motion passes 7-0. So there'll be only one set of questions, Dr. Gonzalo and Mr. Mitchell.
Yes, and Ms. Bass, we have one question. I'm not sure I see the clock that IT was setting up. Is that available?
Yeah, the IT department's going to put a big clock on the screen as soon as Mr. Hewitt's done. As soon as he's admitted, we'll start the clock on those. So he'll be given 2 minutes to make his opening statement, and then Ms. McQuinn will ask her first question, and then he'll have 3 minutes to answer that question and a minute to answer any follow-up question that Ms. McQuinn might ask.
Mr. Hewitt has been admitted. So Mr. Hewitt, if you will please turn your camera on so we can see you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hewitt. If you want to turn your microphone on, what we're going to ask you to do is at some point here shortly, I hope a clock is going to appear on the screen. You need to watch that clock because you will have 3 minutes to give us an opening statement. And then Ms. McQuinn's going to ask you the first question. She's board member from District 1, so we're going to go down the line with 7 board members, each asking you a question. You'll have 3 minutes to answer the question the board member presents. The board member asks you a follow-up question, you'll have another minute to answer the follow-up question. So okay. As soon as you start speaking, they'll turn on that clock. So if you want to give us your opening statement, that'd be great.
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity for the interview and meeting with the board. The process has been very professional to this point, and again, I appreciate that. As far as the position, as I've mentioned before in my virtual meetings with the board members, I do think I have the credentials, the experience to do the job. I really didn't prepare anything. I just talking off the top of my head here. But again, the district again seems like a good place to work. Again, as I mentioned in some of my earlier conversations, I do have 3 daughters that went through the school district, and they had a positive experience. So I'm excited at the opportunity to be a part of the district and to hopefully make a positive contribution in terms of helping to streamline the process and in terms of improving the control environment and hopefully being an asset. That's all I have at this time.
All right, thank you. Mrs. McQuinn, you want to ask your first question?
Sure. Hello, Mr. Hewitt.
Hello, Ms. McQuinn.
What is a long-range objective that you developed in your job, and what did you do to achieve it?
I would maybe go back to FAU. One example might be to implement the use of data analysis software. In this case, we're talking about ACL. And I did that at FAU several years ago, and it was based on, it took, again, I would consider it somewhat long-term because we did it in phases over a period of time. And we had some technical issues along the way, and there's a learning curve, but we were able to eventually get things going. We didn't use ACL for all of our assignments. It was only conducive for use for certain assignments. So we'd use it basically if we needed to, for example, select statistical samples, we'd use ACL, and we would use it to do other analysis on large populations of data. So that example comes to mind.
Thank you.
Do you have a follow-up question? Do you have? Okay, Mr. Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. Thank you for being here today. My question for you is related to your management style and your supervision of employees. Can you share with us your experiences related to supervising employees and organizing your office and accountability with employees? Sure,
let me answer the first part first. I consider my management style somewhat collaborative. I like to work with people, and I like to, get feedback from folks before I make a decision. So I certainly like to consider all points of view. So once I decide on a decision, I'll move forward and I'll accept the responsibility, for that decision. As far as supervising staff, I think I've mentioned previously, my experience with supervision has been limited in terms of the number of staff. FAU, we had a shop of four individuals, and the inspector general, I was his assistant, and then we had 2 staff members. So I would supervise those two staff auditors basically. Generally got along, and I think I was always tried to be fair and equitable with the staff and be professional in my interaction with the staff. And I think they appreciated that. I also considered myself a mentor. Certainly in the early years, I would definitely try to help out and encourage the staff members to do better and address their concerns and that sort of thing. So I think by nature, I think I am a little more technically kind of logically oriented person, but I do try to get along with people. And over the years, I think I've improved and continue to work on my people skills. I do believe I communicate in writing effectively, but I've also improved my verbal communication skills as well. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yes, thank you. And just a quick follow-up to that. As you realize, the district is a very complicated, large organization. What are your thoughts on how you would handle the assignment of duties and trying to assign tasks to employees based upon their capacity to be effective in doing whatever investigation or audit they might be involved in?
Right, good question. I think from what I can see, based on how the department is structured, it looks like there are three main areas in terms of, one focusing on the audits, another one on investigations, and a third, I believe, on contract compliance. So certainly, I would rely on that delineation of responsibility as far as getting things done. And I think if I'm hired over time, I would certainly in the early part, I would definitely sit down one-on-one with all the staff and get a sense of what their strengths and weaknesses are, and then just to make sure that they're deployed in the right area and they're doing the right type of things. So I think that's important, just getting a sense and assessing the capabilities of the staff and trying to understand what they're doing and try to deploy them as best.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good.
Ms. Brill.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Hewitt. As
Right.
you know, we weren't able to see each other when we met the other day, but I thank you for your time.
Sure.
And as you know, the questions that I asked when we met were all questions that I devised. So I am going to ask you something now that you might have perhaps been asked by my colleagues in their interview, or perhaps not. But my question is, to please tell us why objectivity and independence are critical when conducting an audit or an investigation, and describe how you maintain your objectivity and independence.
Good question. I think it starts at the top, and everything hinges on the organizational status of the department. So, in the case of the school district, for example, obviously the Inspector General reports to the board, which is critical for that as far as independence is concerned. Objectivity, again, they are related. I think objectivity has to do more with the individual's mindset in terms of are they going to be fair? Are they going to be impartial in how they do things? I think that's critical. So both things are absolutely critical, but that's definitely the issue of your organizational status. It can't be overemphasized. I think that's absolutely critical. Now, having said that, I think there is a sense of responsibility that goes along. We talk about having objectivity, being objective and independent. We also have a sense of responsibility. With that comes responsibility, and I think the Inspector General does have a responsibility to exercise that authority from that independence in an ethical and professional, credible way.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mrs. Whitfield?
Thank you so much. Hello, Mr. Hewitt. It's nice to see you. I also didn't get to see you last time.
Yeah, a couple of people didn't work out, but most did, I think. So
we had a little struggle, but we got through it. We talked a lot about the climate that we're in as far as education funding and all of the struggles that this district and this board specifically are going to be going through. So since it is such a tumultuous time in education funding, why do you think you're the right person for this job to lead the IG and the audit for our district?
I recognize the challenges. I think our entire economy, our entire society is dealing with the current environment and things that are going on. So it's a challenge for everybody. I work with the city of Pompano Beach, and we're facing, as local government bodies, we're facing similar challenges as state and county and so on entities. So that's an ongoing challenge for everybody. Again, there's uncertainty in terms of what will happen down the road. I know that the board is contemplating reopening, or how best to reopen, or what reopening would look like for the schools in the fall. So it's an overall challenging environment. To answer that part of your question, I do think again that I think I'd be able to navigate those challenges, relying on, again, my leadership skills, and relying on maybe efficiencies. For example, if we could be talking about potential budget cuts down the road unless things change. There's uncertainty there. So I certainly would think in terms of efficiencies, ways to save money within the department, and just trying to manage the resources effectively. On a more personal note, I certainly, there's always the prospect of layoffs, for example. My personal philosophy is I would more support maybe some kind of across-the-board pay cut before any kind of layoff. I would consider the last resort, myself included in that across-the-board cut. So again, just a question of awareness and efficiency, and just a sense of the environment.
With your last minute that we have on this question, can you talk about the technical skills that you possess that would lead you to be the best person for this job?
A good question. I've been exposed to multiple systems at the city and even more at FAU, a very complex environment. I'm familiar with, at the Pompano Beach, the main system there is called Naviline. There's a timekeeping system called ExecuTime at FAU. Main systems for student, the main student information system was called Banner Student. Several years ago, FAU transitioned to a paperless environment called Workday. It's Workday Finance and then Workday HCM, Human Capital Management. So exposure to a wide variety of systems at FAU and City of Pompano Beach. I'm not by any means a computer expert. I'm computer literate. I'm not an expert by any means, but certainly, as I mentioned before, I was innovative, I think, in terms of learning and helping to implement the use of ACIA, data analysis software, at FAU.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here.
Sure, you're welcome.
Hello, Mr. Hewitt. It's been a couple of days. My question for you is, there are key departments in the district that may benefit from a collaborative working relationship with the Inspector General, such as HR, school police, among others. Can you share your views of how these entities should work together on an ongoing basis?
Right, it's in the department's interest, the IG's office, to work with all the departments, but your point's taken. I think there'd be more likely interaction with certain departments. HR obviously would come to mind. The police, I think, would come to mind. Maybe the attorney's office and so on. So it would make sense that there might be a higher level of interaction for certain key departments. That would make sense. So I would, again, my approach would be to try to develop good rapport, certainly with all the parts, but in particular the ones you mentioned. I think that's critical. Would be critical for the functioning of the department, because there's going to be, I would predict there'll be some mutual reliance in terms of the IG office relying on other departments for certain support and vice versa. So general philosophy, general approach would be try to work with people in a collaborative, meaningful way.
All right, so a follow-up to that. So, we have situations where the HR would be handling possibly an investigation that involves something that would still be within the purview of the Inspector General. How would you work together with a department that's also has the authority to investigate the same issue as you are investigating, or you have the authority to investigate? What have you done in the past? I'm sure you've come across that in both the city and at FAU with all the years you were there.
Right. I think, again, usually things are on a case, my experience and what I would anticipate with the district would be on a case-by-case basis. We have had instances, I've gotten complaints, or our office has gotten complaints at FAU, for example, relating to personnel issues occasionally. We didn't have a high volume of complaints, but occasionally we get complaints that would involve personnel issues. So in some cases, if it's something very significant in terms of maybe fraud, waste, or abuse, or something that we need to look at, then certainly we would take the lead role in that type of investigation. But if it's more routine personnel, conflict amongst personnel, I think usually we might just defer that to the HR department.
All right, thank you very much. Mrs. Andrews?
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt, and it's great to see you again.
Very much so, yeah.
Mr. Hewitt, can you tell me, within your experiences in your current job, as well as your past employment, can you tell me, was there an office, an audit unit in any of your experiences? Was there a particular audit unit that you led? And if you can be specific about your workload and your leadership and some specific audit situations that you were involved with that you led.
All right, good question. Again, at FAU, my situation at FAU and Pompano, my roles are similar in terms of I'm currently the deputy city auditor for Pompano Beach, City of Pompano Beach, and I was in effect the deputy inspector general at Florida Atlantic University. Part of my responsibility at FAU and currently at Pompano is I do develop or draft audit programs. And audit programs, I mean a set of audit steps or procedures to be taken in order to achieve a particular audit objective. And that document is important because it guides the audit and it kind of sets the tone and the scope of the audit and so on. So I've been involved in that aspect. Generally, I would, at multiple occasions, I've supervised audits from start to finish. That's pretty common. It's common at FAU, and it's a similar situation at Pompano. The difference at Pompano, because there's only 3 folks at Pompano, city auditor, myself, and we have an assistant, I would pretty much do everything from start to finish in terms of drafting the audit program, in terms of leading the entrance conference, in terms of executing the work, in terms of discussing any findings and recommendations and drafting report. Again, a similar situation at FAU. My boss in both cases would be involved in terms of if I had any questions or maybe some guidance in terms of the direction, or I may discuss certain findings that come up. And certainly they would be involved, they would participate typically in the entrance conference and in the exit conference at the end. And I would generally draft the audit report, and they would edit the report, make any adjustments and so on before we issue, we issue the final report.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Hewitt.
Hello, Dr. Robinson.
So the question I have is, tell us about a time when you had to address issues related to staff morale, since those issues have to be addressed in order to have camaraderie so that you can work together effectively and efficiently.
Very good question. I'll go back more to FAU. Again, it was a small staff, 4 individuals, and generally, everyone got along. Now, I was at FAU for 22 years, so there were occasions over those years where we would have some conflicts with some subordinates, and during that time, we did eventually have to terminate maybe about 3 employees over the course of that time. When I say, I mean in conjunction, myself in conjunction with my boss, we had to do that. And that's always that's almost like a last resort, a very difficult decision. But in those, I'd say maybe 3, maybe 4 cases over the years. But sometimes, certainly you try to have some, counseling and some remedial action to address issues, but sometimes it doesn't work. And at some point, things don't work out, and you have to make that call. Always, in our case, a very difficult kind of gut-wrenching decision, especially for my boss, certainly for both of us, because you're talking about someone's livelihood. Very difficult, but in some cases, it just had to be done. But in a broader sense, like I said, my personality is such. I try to get along, with everybody as much as possible. And in most cases, that would work. In some cases, it doesn't work. There are certain people I know from experience I've dealt with that you try to compromise a little bit, try to reconcile, and some people have no interest in compromise or reconciliation. You're in effect, almost wasting your time. That's an extreme case, but certainly that's out there. I do recognize again, and that the department, the IG department at the district is a larger department, certainly more folks than I'm used to, but I don't know if that's necessarily a concern. And as I mentioned, if I were hired, one of the first things I'd do obviously would be to meet collectively with the staff, but also on a one-on-one basis to kind of, find out what folks are doing, learn their jobs, and find out any concerns that they have. Now, over time, I would learn more, and I'd be, make better decisions over time. But certainly initially, I'd want to talk to the folks one-on-one, what's troubling you, and then over time, we'll see what adjustments or what changes that need to be made. Initially, I wouldn't expect, there wouldn't be any wholesale major changes initially, but I would think certainly for a few months, there'd be a learning process, and then eventually may get to some point of some changes. And even those changes I would anticipate would be incremental changes. I wouldn't come in and try to just change things. I'd invest some time in learning and understanding the environment and the folks I'm interacting with.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. At this point, we'll give you 3 minutes. You could any kind of closing statement you'd like to make to the board.
Just again, I'd like to thank thank the board members for the opportunity. I know there are lots of other good candidates out there. I think I'm a decent candidate, but certainly, there are lots of good candidates out there, and everything is competitive. So I feel good about the fact that if I get hired, that's great. If not, I still have a job, so that's the good news. But I certainly appreciate the opportunity, and like I said, I do feel honored that I was selected as a finalist for the job, and that I think that does say a lot. Sometimes you feel a little bit inadequate sometimes, but I think I'm competitive with the others. And again, if you hire me, again, I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. Nobody is, but you're going to get a dedicated, disciplined, focused employee. And if there are problems in the way things are done, I'm going to work to resolve it. That's all I can say. I'm not a miracle worker, and I know everybody's not going to be happy, especially in a department that size. But I certainly would like to, have folks as happy as we can. It's your job. You come to work every day. I want people to, feel a part of the team, and that they can come in and make a difference. And again, by nature, I'm kind of non-confrontational. I don't, by nature, I'm kind of laid back. Just why I can't change it. But that doesn't mean I'm not effective. I just have a different style, a different way of approaching things and doing things. So that's all I have. So, hope things work out, and I wish the other candidate, good luck. So that's all I have. And again, I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. After we interview the other candidate, the board will be making some decisions on what we're going to do next. So I'm sure that HR has probably briefed you on all of that. So thank you today for taking the time to be with us. And at this point, Mrs. Bass, if you want to go ahead and admit the other candidate.
About we have to switch cameras before Teresa starts. I just sent her a note, bring her in.
Mr. Barbieri, it's going to take just a couple of minutes until we switch cameras.
No problem. Just let us know when you're ready.
Mr. Barbieri, she's in the room. We're just wiping down everything in that room, and she'll be starting in less than a minute.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Barbieri, I was just informed they're having a little bit of a technological issue, so they're working on it with our IT. And as soon as I know more, I'll let you know.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, sir.
I've just admitted her to the meeting.
We're not having technological issues anymore.
Ms. Michael, can you see us? And can you turn your camera on? And also just letting you know, Mr. Barbieri, that Barbara McQuinn is also having technical difficulties, and she is currently out of the meeting. There is Ms. Michael. Great.
Yes, I'm here.
Good afternoon, Ms. Michael. How are you today?
Good. How are you all doing?
We're great, thanks. So I just want to explain what we're going to do. So we're going to give you 3 minutes to have an opening statement, and then each one of the board members will ask you one question. They may or may not ask you a follow-up question depending on how you answer your question, but you'll have 1 minute to answer the follow-up question. When all 7 board members have asked you a question, at that point you'll be able to give us a 3-minute closing. You have 3 minutes to give us a closing statement. So, do you have any questions for us at this point?
No, sorry, no.
Okay, so Ms. McQuinn will go first because she's District 1, but since she's temporarily out of the meeting, having some technical difficulties, we will go to District 2, which is Mr. Shaw. Ms. Brill, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Barbieri, I believe that Ms. Michael's supposed to give us an introduction before we start.
Okay, I thought I said that, but maybe I didn't. You'll have 3 minutes to give us your introductory opening statement. Then we'll go with the board member. So I'm sorry about that. Is Ms. McQuinn back? I don't see her picture here, but is she here? No. So we'll go with we'll get back to Ms. McQuinn. Would you start, Ms. Brill? I'm sorry, Mr. Shaw's in District 2. Mr. Shaw.
Thank you. Thank you, and welcome, Mrs.
Excuse me, Mr. Shaw, excuse me. After Ms. Brill corrected me, I realized that I still did not give Ms. Michael 3 minutes. So I'll get my act together here. It's been a little stressful today, as I'm sure for all of you. But Ms. Michael, you have 3 minutes to give us an opening statement. So please do so at this time.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for giving me this opportunity. I know the audit committee and HR and also the board members, this took a lot of work. This wasn't an easy task, and there was a lot of research and a lot of time invested in this, and I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the time this week and the one-on-one interviews that I had with each one of you. First and foremost, I have dedicated a little bit over 23 years of my career to working in the Inspector General field. And this is something that I'm very passionate about. I have not become jaded over the years. I still believe in it. And I believe in the oversight. And I also believe in education, as in this is one gift that you can give a child that you can't take away. And this is a very positive point for a child. And this is something that, especially in these times with what we're faced with right now, we have to have the most accountability and the most oversight. And that's why I believe at this point, you have to have an Inspector General that is going to work with their stakeholders and be able to communicate with them and have the experience behind them to do so. And I believe that I'm the candidate that can do that with you and with the school board.
Thank you. I don't see Mrs. McQuinn back yet, so Mr. Shaw now. I'm sorry I interrupted you before, Mr. Shaw.
No, that's fine. Thank you. And again, welcome. My question for you, I'll have two parts. The first one is, can you share with us a little bit about your management style, how you supervise employees, and how you would organize your office as related to your day-to-day supervision of employees and accountability?
That's an excellent question, and it's something that's very important. And I know that it's something that's on all of the staff in the office's minds. First and foremost, you have to make a connection with the employees. I have to understand what they want. What are they looking for? What are their career goals? There's nothing worse than feeling as though you're just a number or a cog, that your supervisor doesn't care or doesn't take a personal interest in what you're doing or what your aspirations are. So I try to connect with the staff on a daily basis and at least understand what they're looking for and what they want to achieve. I also, of course, and everybody says they have an open door policy. I literally do. We'll have an open door policy with the staff. But I also let them know that prior military, and I do believe in an organizational chain of command, that if you have a problem, please go to your supervisor first and then come to, work your way up through the chain of command. Follow the proper procedures. Try to work it out first with that person. But I am here and I will help in any way possible. So I'm very hands-on. I believe in having a lot of communication. I don't believe in just throwing paper at somebody. There's a lot of talking. And I believe in having meetings and a free flow of communication. And let them know that I've been in their shoes and I haven't forgotten what it's like to be a line staff or a director or a manager. I've been there and I haven't forgotten it. So I know what they're going through and I won't forget what that's like. So I can relate to them. So those are some of the things that I try to remind them, that I keep that in my mind and on forethought at all time. I also let them know that I do not tolerate anybody who I call is ethically challenged. In the Office of Inspector General, you have to be above reproach and that you cannot compromise one bit. And that is something that we set the standard on, and that is something that there's no ambiguity.
Okay, thank you. And the follow-up is related.
Mr. Shaw, I'm sorry. Before you ask your second question, I thought Mrs. McQuinn could hear us but not see us. I understand that she is not able to, and she's moving her equipment. She's going to be joining us by phone. So hold off on your question so we're sure Mrs. McQuinn can hear your question and then the answer.
Okay.
Proceed. Mrs. Bass, let us know when Mrs. McQuinn is able to hear us.
Will do. I am talking with her now.
Does that mean she can hear us?
I'm only texting with her.
Okay. We should wait. We should wait until Mrs. McQuinn has an opportunity to hear the other questions and certainly hear Ms. Michael's answers. Sorry, Miss Michael. At least we can hear you, so that's good. Just so everyone knows, our IT department is working right now with Mrs. McQuinn to try and get her connected. So hopefully I've got great faith in IT. They've been able to handle everything else. I'm sure they'll figure out some way to fix this one. Mrs. McQuinn, apparently in Mrs. McQuinn's area, there may be an area outage where she can't even connect by telephone at this point. She's asked if we want to proceed without her at this point. Mrs. Rico, you see any issues with that? The board members asked to proceed without her.
Yes, I mean, if she has confirmed with Mrs. Bass that is her request, then the board can continue without her.
All right. So at this point, hold on a minute, Miss Rico, I want to talk to you. Please call me on my district cell. On my cell. Mrs. Anders.
Since we eliminated some of the questions, we didn't need as much time as we thought we needed. Is there a possibility for us to get a break while we work to get Mrs. McQuinn?
Yeah, let me find out what's going on, Mrs. Anders. Hold on a minute. So on the advice of legal counsel, we're going to take, following Mrs. Andrews' suggestion, it's certainly, it's unfair that, the Mrs. McQuinn is not going to be able to hear the questions and answers. So at this point, let's go ahead and schedule a break we'll start with 15 minutes. So we'll give 15 minutes, and if we still don't have Mrs. McQuinn, we may extend that break. Mrs. Bass?
So Mrs. McQuinn is joined by phone. She can hear you. She can't speak. She's going to email me her question and said if you will read her question out loud, or I can read her question out loud, she can hear Ms. Michael's response. Will that work?
That's great. I was just concerned that she was going to have to vote at the end without hearing the question for the candidate. So certainly that's fine. So as long as you're confirming Ms. McQuinn. And when we get to Mr. McQuinn, which is actually right after Mr. Shaw's done with his follow-up, and we'll go back to Ms. McQuinn. So if you want to get her question, be prepared to read it, that would be great. So at this time, Mr. Shaw, would you like to ask your follow-up question? I'm sorry, Ms. Michael, for the hold-up here.
Yeah. Thank you. This will be a memorable experience for you, Mrs. Michael. My follow-up is, as it relates to your management style and your day-to-day operating procedures, will you address the issues of the assignment of duties to the employees in the office and setting the workload based upon the expertise or needs of particular audits, so that you assure that we've got accountability?
Mrs. Michael, turn on your microphone.
There we go. I'm sorry. The directors will be the ones that will be responsible for the actual day-to-day activities. I would not jump over unless I was not seeing productivity. I would be meeting with the directors, and we would have milestones to see, are they meeting these milestones on every audit, on every investigation? I typically like to meet with the directors on a weekly basis, sometimes even more, depending on if I'm seeing a problem. And of course, that can be, they can come and meet me anytime if there's a problem. And I've always had where a director will come in and say to me, we've got an issue, or I'm running into a problem, or something is slowing down or speeding up. But usually I have a weekly meeting with the directors, and they will tell me how they're going. What, are we meeting our milestones? Are we going to end up meeting our final deadlines and timeline for the due dates? Because no report is good if it's not timely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Michael. Ms. Bass, would you please read Mrs. McQuinn's question to Mrs. Michael?
I don't have it yet, but it should arrive at any moment now if you want to go to the next person.
Okay, sounds good. Mrs. Brill, you're next.
So thank you, and thank you, Ms. Michael. It's a pleasure to see you again, and thank you for your patience with this process. It's been interesting. So, you know, I had asked you my own questions when we met, and now I'm going to ask you a question that you might have heard before from one of my colleagues, but I would like to ask this, and that is, tell us why objectivity and independence are critical when conducting an audit or investigation, and describe how you maintain your objectivity and independence.
Well, that's an excellent point and an excellent question. That is one of the cornerstones of any Inspector General, is being independent. And there's twofold, both in appearance and in actuality. You know, the structure of the office is normally structured, or typically structured, and in this case is structured independent, in that the Inspector General reports to the governing body, which is the school board. And that you have it so that the Inspector General is not terminated unless for cause. You have oversight, but there's no influence from the outside, and you are independent in the actions in where you can pick your audit or your investigations. There's also an issue where you have to have can have the appearance of any type of lack of independence. And a lot of that is done, most of all, through how you conduct yourself, making sure that you don't overstep and go into management where you make management decisions, and where you also are taking part in developing policies where you shouldn't be. Also, if you lose your objectivity in that, where I can't very well help you develop a policy, then turn around and look at that policy and tell you that policy is good or not. There's also a independence where each year, most IGs will do an attestation where that they are attest to their independence and understand the importance of that independence. And then also for each project, you usually do an attestation as well on independence. And that attestation not only says that you don't know of any impairments, but if you do come up with or come across an impairment, you will immediately cease and notify your superiors that you have come across an impairment. And that's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize, that there may be something that you may come across that you didn't realize that there could be an issue. And you always have to go back to your plans, your work plan, your audit plan, your investigation plan, to make sure that you're not having going down a different trail, and you're staying focused, and that maintains your objectivity in a lot of ways. And you speak, and you've got to communicate with your supervisors to make sure that you're not just following what you believe is important and what you think is what is necessary to be done. So education, looking back at the plan, those are the issues that you have to maintain. But independence is crucial. If you are not independent, and it doesn't mean that you don't communicate with your stakeholders, but if you don't maintain that independence and that objectivity, you are not going to be an effective Inspector General or have an effective office.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Bass, is Mrs. McQuinn's statement ready? All right, question ready?
Yes. Yes. This question is from Barbara McQuinn. What is a long-range objective that you developed in your job, and what did you do to achieve it?
I think one of the long-range objectives at the Department of Financial Services when I first came on board was for the accreditation. Initially, when I entered Department of Financial Services, they were not accredited. There were some issues with the CFA accreditation, They weren't really following the Green Book standards very closely. They had no policies, no procedures. They didn't have a case management tracking system. And when you're not consistent with the way you do things, you have a lot of problems. You can very well explain, well, we did it this way, but we always, but I don't have a policy. Okay, well, but we always do it this way. That people can understand, okay, we understand why you did it. You don't have a policy. This is why you always do it that way. So CFA, having the accreditation, that was one of the main focuses of what I went to with DFS. Also getting more of a communication and more of a structured office with DFS. That was one of my long-term goals with them. And we established that. We had great communication. I was working with the different departments, the different division directors. We were doing a lot of classes, a lot of trainings. So they actually understood that we were a resource for them to utilize and that we were just Monday morning quarterbacks coming in to say, I gotcha. And they actually reached out and we did training for the attorneys. We got them some CLEs. It was a great environment, and I think it had a good impact, and our statistics showed that in the end. Did I cover the?
I see Mrs. McQuinn is back. Mrs. McQuinn, you want to turn on your microphone? If you have a follow-up question for Mrs. Michael, you can ask it at this point.
I don't have a follow-up question, but I'm so happy to see all of you. Thanks.
We're happy to see you again, Ms. McQuinn. Mrs. Whitfield, you'd be next.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Ms. Michael, for being here. We really appreciate you. So this is an extremely tumultuous time for education funding and for the district in general, with all the things that we have coming up. Why do you think that you are the right person to lead the IG department and the audit department at this time?
I have 23 years experience in this field. I have attained the certifications. I'm a certified inspector general, certified inspector general investigator. I'm a certified fraud examiner. I've worked through the different levels. I know how to supervise a audit division. I know how to work with others. I also understand the school system. I have a sister who's an educator. And I also understand that the times, the way the times are, we have to hang on to this money. And this isn't a time in which that we can be careless with our funding and with our times. I'm familiar with the county as a whole. There's some areas in which have been underserved and they're receiving attention, now, and we are bringing the resources there. But now more than ever, we also have a lot of tension, and there are we've got violence, you've got a lot of issues that I have seen from my time with the Department of Corrections and Department of Juvenile Justice that I think I can bring forward. And I believe I'm a leader. I lead by example. And I also believe I'm a good communicator. And I want to work with people. I don't dictate to them. I communicate with them. And I want to hear the input. I want to hear from the superintendents. And I want to hear from the principals. What can I do to help? How can I help you all do the job of educating the youth? I'm not just here to tick a box and to say, I got you. That's not my purpose. How can I help you do your job?
Thank you very much. And thank you again for being here today.
Thank you.
Mrs. Michael, as soon as I find my question again, it's like this phone doesn't stop the whole time I'm here. There are key departments in the district that may benefit from a collaborative working relationship with the IG, such as human resources, school police, among others. Can you share your views of how these entities should work together on an ongoing basis?
You have to. Every IG's office works closely with their HR. You also, with school police, that's excellent that you have that. I've worked with law enforcement before. The Department of Financial Services actually has a law enforcement section. I had sworn law enforcement that actually worked for me because we had law enforcement in our agency. So I'm very familiar with the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights, which I'm sure that you're aware of is a very restrictive a very complicated issue that you have to deal with. But I understand all of those functions, and we have to work together. HR, many times, if we work together, we can sit there and I can assist them on doing reviews. There may be issues where I may not understand where they are going with the policy. I need to understand where their policies are, how they are looking at different factors. I don't want to overstep because I don't make policy decisions for HR, but we have to work together because I may do an investigation in which they are going to make a decision on. As far as the police officers, if I come across something that's criminal in nature, I'm going to stop. And if it's a matter that is something for law enforcement, I'll refer to them or to the state attorney's office or whatever jurisdictional issue should be there. As far as HR, they have to have a product from me that they can use, that they can understand. So I may have collaboration as far as they may not like the report, the way it's written. Maybe they want an executive summary that is easier for them to utilize, or maybe they want something that's a little bit different to help them with their process, or that would easier for them to use with the union. So those are things that I'm very flexible. There's nothing that's written in stone as long as it's not a policy or a law violation. If it's something that helps HR or the school police, then we should work together.
Thank you. So I have a follow-up question for you. So I understand, the working relationship is very important between, the IG and those other departments. But what if you have a situation where, your authority is pretty broad as the Inspector General, and it's an issue that both you would have authority to investigate as well as the Human Resources Department. How would you handle a matter like that where both departments have the investigative authority?
Well, I understand we both may have the authority, but who is better suited for that investigation? Who is better suited? Is that an area that is more management related, or is it a policy violation that would be better suited by the IG's office? And maybe I should just refer to them and then track it and see what they do, see how they report on it, review their report. Or is it something that, I think that they need somebody from the outside, more independent? And maybe that is something that I would look at and say, no, I believe this is something that rises to the level of the Inspector General. This is a serious policy violation.
Great, thank you for your answer. Mrs. Andrews?
Thank you, and it's great to see you again, Mrs. Michaels.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, my question deals with your experience on your job right now, as well as your experience when you were at the Department of Financial Services. And I would like to know, did your offices at that time have an audit unit that you led, that you were the leader of? If you could be specific about the audit work that you've done as a leader, as well as some of the typical kinds of audit work you've done that you've led and done.
The office that I am at now with the county, I am in the contract oversight and evaluation. So I work with the audit unit on different matters, but I don't lead them and I don't participate in the audits. So not currently. At the Department of Financial Services, as the Inspector General, I oversaw the audits that were being done in the office. I also oversaw the risk assessments that were being done, as well as any of the external audits that were being done. We are the liaison for that. Our office averaged approximately 18 external audits at any one time. For some reason, we always had the Auditor General doing quite a few audits, probably because we had the Treasury and the financial accounting for the state. Most of our audits were done. We had Division of Rehab and Liquidation. We did a large audit that we had to bifurcate that was quite big. We had a Dave and David audit, which was over the licensure system. We had a cash management audit and a purchasing card audit when I was there. And then we did some consulting engagements as well.
Thank you, Ms. Sanders. Ms. Michael. Dr. Robinson? Go ahead, Dr. Robinson.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Ms. Michaels. How are you?
Fine, doctor. How are you?
Doing well. So please tell us about a time when you had to address issues related to staff morale. And it's important because camaraderie is in order for people to work together efficiently and effectively.
Most definitely. The Inspector General's office, if you've ever seen IG staff at a luncheon, we're always the ones sitting by ourselves because no one wants to sit near us. It's the wallflowers. Nobody likes us. You know, people groan when we walk in. I've slowly gotten used to that over the years. So we have to have a lot of team building. And some of the things that I did, and the staff would blame me for their weight gain because I would always buy donuts. And when we did our annual report, I would do barbecues, and we would bring in food. Somebody had celiac, so we had to be very careful with that. So we had a lot of team building. We had a game where you'd have to guess who this person was. It was a way of trying to figure out who different people were. And it was interesting because you just get a fact about somebody, and they didn't realize, oh, I never would have thought this was this person. And it got people talking, and it broke down some barriers, and we built a team. And because it was such a low morale, and you have to have a good morale because, again, nobody else likes us. We have to like each other, and you have to work well together. And I try not to have the audit team over here and the investigation team over there, and then you have another unit over there, and they don't talk. We had an auditator who worked in both, and he's a strange animal. He likes both, and we called him our own little auditator, and tried to do a lot of cross-training, and they like that because they have a tendency to get bored if you're just doing one thing over and over again. And I like to combine where you have an auditor and an investigator, because sometimes auditors may not be the best interviewers, but they're a lot better with numbers and financials. So putting the two together works very well. And I've gotten some great results that way. And they're not so divided, and it brings everybody together. And I remind them, nobody sees auditor, nobody sees investigator, they just see OIG. So when you walk out of this office, forget that. They just see Inspector General. That's all they see. So that's what I do. And everybody usually has a laugh. I can be a little bit of a prankster with the office. So that I try to keep things a little bit light. But again, ethics are very important to me. Did I cover the question for you?
You got a thumbs up from Dr. Robinson. So at this point, Ms. Michael, if you'd like to take 3 minutes to give us a closing statement, you may want to incorporate a little bit of your beginning statement so Mrs. McQuinn can hear it also, if you'd like to.
Again, I'd like to thank you all for giving me this opportunity. I know that you all have taken a lot of time. I've met one-on-one with you. I saw the work that the audit committee put into this. I saw the work that HR did, and I saw the time that you all put in looking at the policies, the qualifications, looking at 20.55. I saw that, the work that the Inspector General put in. He has dedicated, and built this office up with your help and the support. And I know people in the office right now. I know, two of the staff there. And I want to continue to build on that and improve on that. And I believe that the years I have, I've made tough calls. I've done whistleblowers. I've made the determinations on whistleblowers. I've, supervised investigations on whistleblowers, and I've made the tough calls. I've done what it has to be done, and I think I can help you all do the job that you all want to do. And again, I appreciate the time and the consideration, and I hope everybody stays safe and stay well in these very tumultuous times that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Michael. So what the board will do now after you leave us, we will have a discussion on what we're going to do next, including whether we're going to vote and how we're going to vote and all that good stuff. And so at this point, it was nice seeing you today, and I'm sure that you'll be getting contact from HR as to what exactly is happening here afterwards.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
You're welcome. So at this time, board members, we need a motion to move forward one way or the other, whether you want to go ahead and take a vote at this point, or if you want to hold off on the motion and have some discussion. Personally, I'd like to know how all of you felt, but that's my personal, how you felt about the different candidates. But I see Mrs. Andrews put up her hand up first, and then Ms. Brill. Mrs. Andrews.
Yes, I'd like to have a discussion, and I hope I can be first, but I'd like to have a discussion.
Okay. Unless there's an objection to having a discussion, let's go with it. Mrs. Andrews, go ahead.
Thank you. And I appreciate you all hearing from me. I spoke on last week, and so this is not anything that's new on my mind. I really want to re-emphasize some of the things that I talked about at the conversation last week when we were working on the Inspector General's replacement. And I would like to make a motion to put the hiring of the IG on hold for the following reasons. I've been around this district for a long time, and certainly with the experience in HR, and seeing people lose their jobs and seeing budget cuts, especially sitting in as the Chief of Human Resources, as well as the hiring director for the School District of Palm Beach County for many years. And as I said last week, we are in a pandemic. COVID-19, coronavirus is spiking in the state of Florida and right here in Palm Beach County. And the IG office staff is home working. Most of the school district is home. We are home working from home. We may be entering a real budget crisis. We don't know all of the pieces of the budget crisis yet, but we heard Mike Burke tell us that we might have to lay off people. And that's a big deal. And I've been a part of that when we've had to deal with laying off people in my history with the school district of Palm Beach County. We're now sitting here on a hiring hold. As the school board, we have actually been a part of this hiring hold for the last maybe semester where the district has not hired people. We said we have a hiring hold because we anticipate a budget crunch, a real budget crunch where we're not going to get the money maybe from the state, the feds. We still need money as we get to our new normal as it relates to educating our children. And we just heard just a week or so ago from Mr. Burke that we may need to cut supplies for schools. So I'm really worried at this point in time. This is why I want to say this. Just last week, we as a board voted to reconstruct the legal department in order to save money. And Mr. Chu is retiring. We know that his last day is June 30th, but we could save pretty close. And I did call the district to find out $233,000 plus with benefits if we don't move on this position at this time. That's a lot of supplies. That's a lot of help for schools. And it's several people positions that we're talking about right now. We need to be creative on how this office can be run with the goal of saving some money for the school district of Palm Beach County in this critical time. The IG office has staff to carry out these functions. Many of them have their IG certifications. Many of them have the wonderful certifications we heard these great people talk about today. They're right upstairs in that office. So, and they have the credentials. Our peer reviews for the IG office have been fabulous. Now, I've had these conversations with Mr. Chu, and he told me that, Ms. Andrews, no one has asked me about my staff and what I could do to help save money. Well, I'm back here again today to say I'm still scared about what's going to happen with the school district of Palm Beach County as it relates to people being laid off without having supplies for children. And I know we have two wonderful candidates, but we need to put this on hold. We have to be the example as the board in trying to save some money for our children in Palm Beach County. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Brill and then Mrs. Whitfield.
Okay, so with all due respect, Mrs. Andrews, I could not disagree with you more. I think now more than ever, it is imperative we have to have an inspector general in that position. All of you know, I've been asking for almost 2 years for us to do this recruitment. You cannot have an inspector general's office without someone leading that office. And we have made a decision that we're going outside for it. We have two very qualified people. And, with due respect to them, this should have been a conversation last week before we spent all that time with them also interviewing them. But I feel that we have qualified candidates and I'm prepared to vote on them. Thank you.
Mrs. Whitfield and Mrs. Andrews can respond. Mrs. McQuinn, did I see your hand? Yes, okay.
Thank you. I also do not want to see us go internally to the department for a temporary fix. The only way that I could be okay with trying to put this off for a little while would be if we went to the county and asked them to take over for a year while we get our ducks in a row. But I'm prepared to vote today as well. So I would very much like to see this taken care of today. I think with not having the general counsel and doing, a kind of a stopgap measure there, I'm very concerned about, the stability in this district. And I would very much like to see an inspector general of some kind, even if it is just contracting out with the county IG, if that would save money. I think that was $100,000. So it would save quite a bit of money. So I understand what you're saying with funding. But I do not want to just have an internal person as a stopgap right now.
Ms. Daniel, let Ms. McQuinn, she was at the same time. Let her go first, and then you go, and then Dr. Robinson will be next. Ms. McQuinn?
Okay, thank you. I feel very strongly that if I felt that we didn't have a strong candidate, I always listen to Mrs. Andrews. But I feel so strongly that we have an excellent choice and we can bring stability to that department. I would prefer that we not put off our vote.
Mrs. Andrews, then Dr. Robinson, then Mr. Shaw.
Thank you. This is not about the candidate. I just really want to be clear. We've been working on this for a while. A lot of things have happened here in Palm Beach County School District over the last few weeks and months as we've gone through this process. And I know that we've had a lot of candidates that have dropped out, and we have a pandemic, folks. People don't leave their jobs just like that. When I look at the candidates right now that we're talking with today, I figure they can do that job. But I'm talking about the children of Palm Beach County and our money situation where we are now. That's why last week when I was talking about the county, we could save, if that's the case, we could save $100,000. We're talking about supplies for children and things that we need. We've got to be creative. We were very creative with the general counsel and doing that piece. And I've asked Mr. Chu to speak it up about it. He did not want to say anything, but I need to be on record saying that right now we are the leaders here. I know that we need a great inspector general's office, but guess what? Our peer reviews are great. We have great people up in that office. So I want to commend them for all the work they do. It's not just Mr. Chu up there getting the work done. It's the people in that office doing it. And they have gone through these same certifications, the people that we've talked about. Now, we wouldn't have gone on and on and on with this, but we kept this process going because we really wanted to see if we could get an outside external candidate. And now we've got two people. But right now, the house we live in is not working well, and we need to do something about it, see what we can do, and be leaders from the board to make decision, to hold for a while, and come back to this place at another time when we're in a better position.
Dr. Robinson, then Mr. Shaw.
Yes, thank you. So, we had this conversation a little bit last week, as I recall, and I'm still kind of in the same place. I think I was a little disappointed, more than a little, actually disappointed that this ideal candidate didn't come forward. I think I said in the beginning that my ideal candidate would be somebody that had K-12 experience, right, as an IG, because we're not the widget maker people. We have processes that, yes, can be improved, but first they need to be understood, and not just ding people because you don't understand it and because it's not operating like you're making widgets, right? So I really wanted somebody with K-12 experience that had IG experience, and ideally somebody who, with that K-12 experience was used to working in the public with a governing board, right? And that ideal person didn't show up. So I remember last week's conversation, I think it was last week, when Mrs. Andrews brought up the pandemic, and I wondered, maybe that's why. Maybe it's just that at this point in time, people are just in a stay put mode in large measure, right? Which I wouldn't blame them. Like, everything else is so unstable with the pandemic. I should just stay put and not go after this new opportunity. So I think, I think our candidates are fine, but they're not perfect. And I really would hate, I'm concerned about going for somebody who's good enough with the possibility that somebody who is closer to perfect might be available on the other side of the pandemic. But then when you add in the comments about the budget, and we just saw what our general counsel did in order to save money over the long term, I think that we should explore that. I do think we should explore that. And I think that will provide more stability at this, because this is such a crazy time we're going through. I think that will provide more stability plus save money. Now, the concept of working out something with the county is a whole different level of instability. Like, that's more destabilizing, I think, than choosing one of the candidates in front of us, quite honestly. But I do think that we need to explore that. I think that's something definitely I'm willing to explore, is taking somebody who's, like functionally, I guess, like in a deputy role in the IG's office. And just like we did with the general counsel, let them keep the wheels turning in the direction that they've been going, that Mr. Chu has it going. And then, hopefully in 6 months, we'll be actually on the other side of the pandemic, and we can reevaluate then. Thank you for bringing that forward, Mrs. Andrews.
All right, I want to make a comment. Ms. Brill will be, I'm sorry, Mr. Shaw, you were next. Go ahead.
Thank you. I agree with Mrs. Brill on this issue. We've been dealing with this for several months. We have two candidates who have extensive experience, and I think both of them had experience that work with governing boards at the university level. That can't be much more difficult situation than as far as the governance issue. And working with the county commission is certainly a governmental agency that operates in the public. So I don't think that's. Let me hang up. Sorry about that. So I don't believe that putting this off later, and the reality, and I don't want to sound flippant about this, but saving $100,000 for supplies for students amounts to less than 50 cents per student. So I'm not sure that that alone is enough for us to say it's a significant budget issue. So I think we need to address this issue. We need to move forward. We need to get that office stabilized and be ready to go because of all of the challenges we do. And to put it off and have an interim in that position, I think does a disservice to us. So I'm ready to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. So before I call Ms. Brill again, I want to make a comment. I agree with both Ms. Brill and Ms. Shaw. Mr. Shaw, I mean, first of all, if we were going to do this, we should have done it last week. I mean, there should have been a decision last week to put these people through personal interviews, and then tonight after they go through to tell them, well, too bad, we changed your mind. And with respect to the perfect candidate, we had two candidates, from the only two candidates we had from school districts, and both of them withdrew after they were shortlisted. And to wait till after the pandemic, I mean, some of these reports say this pandemic could go on for another year, 2 years. So, I mean, how long do we wait? Well, we have a $3 billion budget, and we have no inspector general in place to make sure that all of that money is being spent wisely, and somebody's overseeing it. We have, basically, we have a dysfunctional situation if we have no inspector general there, and we have people up there that are going to now rally us they want to be the one in charge, and there's several of them up there that I'm sure would want to get it. And what are we going to have sour grapes when one of them doesn't get to be the interim? I don't even want to go through that situation. With respect to the outside inspector general, I agree with Dr. Robinson. I mean, to bring somebody in, first of all, they said $100,000. When the inspector general sees what they have to do in this district, I'm sure that price is one. I'm sure there's going to be additional costs involved when they see all the calls that come in from the hotline, and those things have to be investigated. Somebody's got to look at every one of them and determine which ones are worth investigating, which ones aren't. So, just to say that the inspector general out there is only going to charge us $100,000, they have no clue what goes on in this place yet, and they'd have to come in here, and I'm sure once they saw the things that we expect them to do, that $100,000 would be, well, that was our preliminary thoughts, but now that we see what we have to do, it's going to be much higher. So I don't think it's fair to the candidates, I don't think it's fair to the district, and it's certainly not fair to the children to put off for a year or so to have an inspector general in this place to make sure the money that the taxpayers have entrusted to us is being spent wisely, and there's somebody that's independent that's overseeing that. So I won't agree to a postponement either if that's the motion that's made at this point. Ms. Brill, you were next.
Thank you. So I just want to say that I think we have two excellent, highly qualified candidates. Everybody knew what their background was when we shortlisted them last week, and I do think we do have the perfect candidate to fill that job. So I would like to make a motion that we vote tonight to select our next Inspector General.
All right, do we have a second on that? Mrs. Whitfield, any further discussion on the motion? All in favor? See a hands, please. Opposed? Mrs. Andrews and Dr. Robinson. So the vote is 5-2 in favor of moving forward with a vote. So Mr. Mitchell or Dr. LaCava, would you take over at this point and get us through that process?
All right, good evening, board members. The voting link has been sent to your chat box. So if you open up the chat box, there should be a link, and the time of the link should be 3:37. Please do not use the 1:55 link, 3:37, and let me know by raising your hand if you did not receive the link or see the link. Okay, so Karen and McQuinn, Mrs. McQuinn, you have not received the link? Can you refresh your
would you remind me where the chat box is? Sorry.
No problem. If you go to the top right-hand corner, there should be 32 individuals in the room, and to the right, there's a little chat icon. Let me present the screen. Give me 1 second, Mrs. McQuinn.
I mean, I usually see it, so that's why I'm...
No problem. And I'm pointing at it.
Yeah, I got it.
You got it? Great, awesome. By raising your hand, does anybody not have the link? All right, thank you. We are if we could start tabulating. Thank you very much.
Okay, got it.
Are they coming in, KB? Yes.
Mr. Barbieri, give us a couple minutes to tabulate.
Wait a second.
All right, the tabulation is complete. Mr. Mitchell is going to go through the votes.
As we were informed last week by legal, we have to read out the individual votes. So I will read that out. We have a 5-2 vote. Mr. Barbieri voted for Ms. Michael. Dr. Robinson voted for Ms. Michael. Mr. Shaw voted for Ms. Michael. Ms. Whitfield voted for Mr. Hewitt. Ms. Brill voted for Ms. Michael. Ms. McQuinn voted for Ms. Michael. And Ms. Andrews voted for Mr. Hewitt. So that's a 5-2 vote for Ms. Michael.
Okay, so what's the process at this point, Dr. LaCava or Mr. Mitchell? Do you notify them, or what do we do next here?
Yes, Mr. Barbieri, we'd ask, would you like us, we can notify Ms. Michael that she's been selected as the vote. We can invite her back into the meeting if you'd like her to make a statement or like the board to say anything, or we can inform her we'll be in touch with her to work on the next steps. And I assume the board would appoint somebody to work with legal and HR to effect a contract.
So at this point, I personally would like to see her come back on the screen so we can congratulate her and talk to her. Unless I see an objection from anybody's hand, we'll go with that. Okay, yeah, but you want to get her back for us, Dr. Alcott?
Yes, we are doing it right now. Give us a couple minutes and we'll set it all up.
Okay, great. Thank you. Ms. Brill, go ahead.
In the meantime, can I make a motion that you work with HR and legal to work on the contract? Mr. Barbieri?
Certainly you can make the motion if somebody wants to second it. That'd be the question. Ms. McQuinn, are you seconding that?
I am seconding. Thank you.
All right. Would you board like to have any discussion on that? Don't feel free to to disappoint me. That's fine, or embarrass me. So it's okay. Say whatever you want. But if there's any discussion. All right. All in favor? Opposed? I guess I'll vote for this too. So the motion is 7-0 for the board clerk. So thank you, colleagues. I will make sure to work on this quickly and get something back to you as soon as possible. Mr. Chair.
Can I clarify Dr. Robinson's vote, please? I saw her hand come up late. 4? Okay, perfect. Thank you. And I'll be admitting Ms. Michael back in.
Okay, Mr. Chu, did you have something you want to say?
Yes, with your permission, I'm ready to meet with Ms. Michael anytime. I'd like to have a very fast-track transition, and I'll tell her everything I know, and then so I'll be more than happy to work with her in a very experienced manner. So
that's great.
I want you all to know. If I have to come back after I retire, I'm ready to do that too.
Okay, Ms. Michael actually wanted to know if she was chosen, if she'd had the opportunity to have some overlap with you, so that I don't know how you're going to have a quick conversation with her to give her everything you know, since you know things that go back 20 some years. So, but anyway, thank you for the offer, and I'm sure that Ms. Michael will welcome that. Ms. Michael, welcome back. As you've probably been told, maybe not. Congratulations, the board has voted to have you as our next Inspector General. So thank you very much. And if you'd like to talk to us, the board members, I know I'll want to say something to you, but you can go first if you'd like, and then we'll have the board members chime in here.
Well, thank you very much. This is an honor. I really do appreciate it. I look forward to working with each and every one of you. I'm truly honored. I hope that I can meet each and one of your expectations, and I will do my best to give you the best work product that you can possibly get. I will give you 110%, and you've had a great Inspector General. I'll try to build on that, and I will promise you a lot of communication. You tell me how you prefer it, and I'll give you that communication, and I promise you I will give it my very best. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I really do appreciate it. I feel very honored. Thank you.
Welcome. Board members would like to speak next. Ms. McQuinn, go ahead.
I just want to say to Ms. Michael that I feel very honored that you have chosen us. Don't give us a tough time, please, with the contract.
I understand.
Mrs. Whitfield?
I just wanted to say welcome aboard. I'm so glad to have you. Thank you so much for sticking it out through this long process. I know it was very difficult, and I'm very glad to have you, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much. It was educational. That's for sure. It was.
Ms. Brill?
Thank you. And I also want to say congratulations. And I really thoroughly enjoyed hearing about your experience before, what was also on your resume, and working with children. And I just think that you will fit so well in with our culture and our office. And so I just want to say welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, if you know it, go ahead, Mr. Shaw.
The same thing. Thank you so much. And I was very impressed when we had a chance to talk. It was great to finally get to actually see you instead of doing the phone thing, since you've had a lot of adventures on technology in the last couple of weeks. So congratulations getting through that. But we wish you the best. And I'm very impressed with your background and the experiences that you've had. So good luck.
Thank you, sir. I truly appreciate it.
All right, if there's no other board members who would like to comment at this time, Mrs. Michaels, I'm sure that HR department will start the process and we'll all be in touch with you soon. So have a good evening and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you very much. I really do appreciate it and I feel very honored. Thank you.
Well,
thank you.
Board members, we need a motion to adjourn this meeting and then we're going to come back here at 5 o'clock, time certain. Motion made by Ms. Whitfield, seconded by Ms. McQuinn. Is anybody opposed to adjourning this meeting? Okay, seeing none, I'll take that as a 7-0 vote to adjourn, and we'll come back at 5 o'clock time certain, which is what we normally handle the regular board meetings. Mrs. Bass, go ahead.
Yes, use your same link that you joined this meeting to join the next meeting at 5.
And it's my understanding if we just click the little telephone thing in the middle, that'll just, it will temporarily disconnect us, but we can click that back on without having to go through the whole process. So there's a little telephone in the white bar, everybody. So if you just click that one, you'll be able to leave and then click on it to open it up again without having to go back through and find the link.
Mr. Barbieri, could you say that again, please? How can we just stay on, right? Or we just mute ourselves and turn off the video, right?
There's a looks like a telephone receiver on the phones that we used to use before you were born, Dr. Fenoy, that had a cord on them, and that phone piece, if you click on it, it'll temporarily take you out of the meeting, but you can click back to go back in afterwards.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chu?
With your permission, I would like to start meeting with her beginning as soon as possible.
Absolutely. That was one of her concerns, was whether she was going to have a chance. So, yeah, certainly. Just check with HR and make sure that everything's clear for her to start getting information, confidential information on the district. So as soon as HR gives you, they'll go ahead, and I'm sure they'll check with the general counsel's office to make sure that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Mrs. Rico, you're the last woman standing. Did you have something you wanted to say before we click off? Okay, we'll see you at 5 o'clock. Thank you.